Media Day, Summit League. As a precursor, we're having some conversations with our head coaches. And heading into the 2019-2020 season, we are joined by J.D. Gravina, head coach at Western Illinois University, Brittany Lange, head coach at Omaha, and Travis Brewster, head coach at University of North Dakota. So what we're going to do is broach a few topics. One is the hot button issue that everybody's hearing about from a ton of different directions, and that's the Fair Pay to Play Act. We see legislation being introduced in California, probably Florida, Colorado, Minnesota, who knows where else. It's been something that's been out there for a while. And I guess what I want to do is just kind of get a general opinion from you. I'll start with you, Coach Gravina. How do you think it impacts the game nationally? How does it impact your program individually? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, when you talked about the hotbed topic in basketball, I thought you were going to talk about Snoop Dogg performing at Midnight Madness, but I guess we're talking about, pay to play. I think right now it's just so confusing of what's going on. I mean, there's no details of how anything would be applied. I think people will take the concept and kind of run with it. Are there going to be boosters at the big BCS schools, offering to buy, $250,000 in a kid's jersey so that they can get that money. And there's a lot of people smarter than me out there, and I feel like at some point they're going to kind of figure it out.
I hear you, and it's to be fair, I don't think the athletic director really realized at all what the dancing and the poles meant. So anyway, we'll let him off the hook. How could you? It's confusing.
Anytime you get a chance to throw KU basketball under the bus, so you've got to do it. So,
Coach Lange, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the big question for us coaches are what's the implementation process going to be, the timing of that, the steps of that, who it's all going to affect. It's obviously something that I think student athletes and the recruiting side of things are going to be excited about. But on the flip side, it does put them more into the pocket of being treated like a professional and more like employees, and so that's going to pose some of its challenges too. So I think we're all just curious to see. We're not FBS or football right now, and we're not on that first tier list of this, but at some point it will probably affect all of us, and so I think we're curious to see all those different variables.
It will be interesting. My guess is if we surveyed a lot of the high school kids and asked them what they think they were worth, I'm guessing it may be a little different than what reality is. Yes. Coach Brewster, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's we're in a unique situation at the University of North Dakota with hockey being a high level. However, when you look at it from the broad spectrum, I really think you got to be careful what you wish for. Because there's going to be an expectation that comes along with a lot of this, and that's one of the things we have to work through and navigate better. Obviously, with the administration and the NCAA, they're going to have to put their hands together collaboratively to try to figure it out, because again, we've got to protect the student athletes, but we have to also empower them so they can have an opportunity to be successful. So, it's progress, and that's what we got to keep doing.
And there's a balance, like you say. I don't think anybody knows how this thing's going to work out, because the devil is in the details. It'll be interesting. Something will happen. We'll watch it play out. You go back to women's basketball on the national stage. I don't think you can argue that the popularity continues to grow, that the level of play continues to improve. Just look at the last number of tournaments, and the Summit League becoming a multi-bid league for the first time in a long time. The NCAA put a strategic plan together. It was pretty general, which the NCAA is great at. But some of the things they talked about: unify and grow the women's basketball community, empower student athletes to reach full potential, celebrate and elevate the game, and create an inspiring experience for all involved. With what you've seen, with what you've experienced, what are some things that you think need to continue to happen so that the women's game continues to be seen in a more and more positive and entertaining light? I'll start with you, Coach Lange.
I think one positive that our game does is on the scheduling side of things. We have coaches in our profession that are all in to promote the game, and we have a little bit more of a ease in scheduling with some of the larger schools and mid-major schools, and I think anytime coaches can get an opportunity to focus games around a cause, like the pink game, or around the community, and again play each other. I know the men's side is a little bit more of a challenge of that. I think we've seen a lot of success with that, and it always supports a cause, and then when you link that kind of story with our game, that's been really positive.
Great point, and those are things that I think we will continue to see happen probably on a larger scale and take place more often. Coach Brewster, your thoughts?
You know, I think the big thing is we have to realize is the more that we can empower our student athletes to see young women out there doing miraculous things, whether it's on the court or in the classroom or in the job field. I think we have to grow our game that way, and what better way to do it is allow those young people to see it each day and put it out there on TV, the internet. Kids nowadays do a great job with Twitter and Instagram, Snapchat. I think I got them all. But I might have got one. TikTok. Yeah, TikTok. There we go. That's the new one. I got to get hip to that. But it's a big deal. And having a daughter, that's to watch our athletes play. It's gave her extra confidence. And I think that's the biggest key is we got to keep growing in that aspect.
Great points. Coach Gravina, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Travis said, having two daughters has been kind of a game changer for me. And when I look at that strategic plan, I really look at just empowering young girls and women, I think, in our society. And I think that, we've started to realize the WBCA, the NCAA, the women's basketball oversight, they're starting to realize that, it's the women's basketball is kind of the premier women's sport. I mean, in some areas, especially professionally, soccer battles that, but we have a big impact in our community. And, I get Facebook messages all the time from, my daughter wears a headband because of Taylor Higginbotham and how much, players in our community. So, and like Brittany said, just really focusing on building that growth in the community. We're having an elementary game this year where, we'll have over 1,000 elementary students, and it's a lot of work and it's a big pain, but, kind of aligning with that idea from the WBCA of trying to get the young girls, especially, some that will never get to come to a college women's basketball game, involved and have some good role models.
Absolutely. Exposure is key. I think you bring up some great points. Yeah. And another thing, when it comes to exposure, how can you continue to make the game more appealing? Because nobody questions as the product has continued to improve, and the interest in the game continues to grow. Some of the things that have helped that out are rule changes. An interesting one right now that's out there they're experimenting with in the G League. If you get fouled on a 3-point shot, you go to the free throw line, you shoot one free throw.
That's what we do in practice.
And some other coaches made a great point. Do we really need to speed the game up? But certain rule changes have increased interest, have changed how you coach. What are your thoughts on what has taken place, what's taking place for this season, and then maybe some potential things down the road that the women's game can continue to do to keep putting a higher and higher quality product out there? I'll start with you this time, Coach Brewster.
Well, I think the big thing that I've noticed is that the athletes are changing, and we have to grow the game according to the athletes. They're stronger, they're bigger, they're faster. Even on the women's side, I think people forget that. And when you're doing that, you got to adjust. And with the 3-point line, for example, I know right now we're still where we were, but I really believe that's probably going to change in a year. You look at picking up the pace of play. I think there's a part that we have to understand is that when you're trying to grow the game, you don't want it to be so fast and erratic that there's no skill set, right? We want to keep our skill set unique. And basketball is a unique skill set as far as you look at the aspect of be able to run, be able to control your heart rate at the free throw line, make a free throw, to how do you think when you're tired. I really think we're doing some good things with the rules. I'm excited about it. But however, we just got to keep realizing that the athletes are getting better, and we got to make sure that the game stays pure.
Great points. Coach Gravina.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple years ago when they really focused on freedom of movement, that was a game changer for women's basketball. And I think part of it was kind of the way I prefer to play and the way I like to coach. But I really thought that opened up our game. And I have a lot of fans talk about how entertaining women's basketball is. And so, I think they've kind of built on that. And I do think that the pace of play is important and the longevity of a game. We talked about having families are a big part of our crowd. And if you have a 7 o'clock game and it gets over at 9:15, that's just too late for young kids to be at the game. But then they do some things I think help that, the 4 quarters, the new shot clock rule, but then they have some of the video review rules that can really bog us down. So I think those are things I'd like for them to back off some of the reviews, especially with some timing things earlier in the half. And then the other thing I don't think will ever happen, but if you haven't heard of the elim ending, it's I think one of the most intriguing rule changes in all of basketball. It kind of ends the fouling at the end of the game aspect and milking the clock, and you just continue to play until you get to the end of the game. And I'd love to even be able to experiment with an exhibition game.
It'll be interesting to see if they do look at that. It is used in some things. That's intriguing. Coach Lange.
I agree with what both have said. I think with everything there has to be balance. The freedom of movement's been huge. Going to 4 quarters, I've been a fan of that. Increasing the amount of end of shot clock kind of situations, advancing the ball. That's another big one that I think people enjoy, and it adds a little more strategy as well. To your point of what you brought up with the G League, that would really affect some strategy as far as when you foul, who you foul, how you respond to things, the pressures on that situation. But like JD said, we kind of sometimes just tell our players to shoot 1 free throw and go the other way. So maybe that won't be so different for our practice regimen.
Absolutely. You bring up some great points, and I think that's one of the things that you want to do is don't mess with something if it doesn't need it, but at the same time try to stay on pace with things. I appreciate your time. You guys contributed some really interesting things, interesting perspectives, and I wish you nothing but the best this upcoming season.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks for
very much.
having us.
Thanks.